any. So, George, you want to take it away?
Okay. Thanks, Bob. These have worked out fine so far. Thank you for participating. I was going to tell you to go on mute, and Peter's taking care of that. You got a brief description of Jim Blair's Princeton career along with the invitation. So he really doesn't need an awful lot of introducing. And I'm supposed to be the moderator. I don't think I'm going to get to do a whole lot of moderating either. Um, you know, Jim has enormous respect for the class, so much so that he called me yesterday or emailed me yesterday and said, "Do I need a tie?" And I said, "For heaven's sake, no." He said, "Oh, good, because I don't have to go out and buy a shirt." Anyway, um, Jim was our very first president as a graduate class. He has handled the entertainment for every major reunion. Anybody who was there will never forget Chubby Checker at our 25th reunion. That's another story, of course. But anyway, and he's been involved in the life of the class from the very beginning, including in recent years the founding and creation of the class foundation. And that's going to be the main thing he wants to talk about today. And as John has alluded to, there might be a little remark or two about football, but this is mainly to talk about the class foundation. On which topic I'm going to turn it over to Jim, who will have Bob Pickens and Ev Prather speaking also as during the next hour. And if you have a question at the end, hold up your hand, and we'll do our best to identify you and give you your chance. Okay? Thank you. Jim, over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, George. And I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with everybody. I tried to beg off of this thing as an individual kind of exercise because I'm truthfully not the brains behind this thing. We've got an activity that's gone on for, I'm going to say 8 to 10 years, and it's probably more like 10 because the time goes so fast. But we have a committee that's been doing this. We send out a letter every year and tell you who the committee is and also beg for some money. But we've had as a group an understanding that it's one thing to beg for money. It's another thing to help people understand why they're doing it, how it differentiates from other things that are all Princeton, and why it's important. I think, particularly as we get into our later years, to kind of establish something that has the class of 1961 associated with it. We have not, I think, in the past put up a lot of buildings or things like that with class of 61 names on it, but I do think that a class foundation can last, even well beyond all of us, and we're getting thinner. I think 26 people this past year passed away, and as our numbers get thinner, our ability to create something that has a lasting impact as it relates to the class for Princeton, it's really important. Members of our committee, and I'm going to move on and get some more direct response from some of them, but Ellen Moore is an ex officio member as our class treasurer. Mike Horn, Bob Pickens, Ev Prather, Carol Wojciechowicz, and yours truly have been active with this. We're starting to get, I think, considerably more active as we move along. But we probably take in 25 to 30,000 a year. We've got about 150,000 in the bank. We try to give away 10 to 15,000 each of the years, but we'd like to take in more. We'd like to involve the class more actively in what we're doing to provide some thought, information, ideas about what to do. One of those ideas was we pitched this at a class reunion about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the things that people said is, what are we doing about mental health? That seems to be a national concern. as Bob and Ed will take you. We think it's certainly true of just about every university that's going on. And we'll chat about that a little longer. But to kind of work through this a little bit, I was referred to as perhaps one of the creators. I really wasn't a creator. I was just one of the first people to put up my hands and say it was a good idea. But this is an idea that, like a lot of great ones in our class, have come from Ev and Joe Prather. I'd appreciate it if Ev might tell you a little bit about the genesis of where this came from. And then we'll talk about some of the real ideas and some of the people that are, Bob Pickens in particular has come up with a good one. We'll pass on to that. Then we'll come about and pick your brains for what else you think we should be doing. So with that, Ev, take over, because you know more about this from the beginning than I do, and it's an impressive story.
All right. Well, first of all, I have to say, I was just tagging along. Everything was really pretty much done by Joe, and it was his thoughts that put this together. At first, he got the vision for the caring committee. That was before the foundation. And that happened when we attended a benefit for the Cancer Hope Network. And that was an organization that pairs people who have survived cancer with those who are just entering into finding out they have the disease, finding out what their treatment's going to be. And as you can imagine, they're pretty upset and pretty worried. So these people who have been through that and come out the other end successfully talk to those people. They form a friendship, and they try to give them hope. That therefore the name Cancer Hope Network. So we were at this dinner, and it was all explained to us, and Joe thought it would be a great idea for the class of 61 to have such a process. So he tried to cover it by I guess first what he did was the best person he could think of in the class that would be able to partner with him to make this happen was Bob Pickens. So he and Bob got together, and a few of us met with the Cancer Hope Network people, and they actually trained us. And that was, and Bob, you chime in at any point, and if I'm saying anything wrong or you've got anything to add.
There's one little piece at the beginning, absolutely the inspiration of our beloved Joe Prather. He dragged me along to a meeting during reunions, the class of 57, I believe it was their 55th reunion. And the class of 57, under the leadership of Ted Jones, had created a caring committee. So that was after the inspiration from Cancer Hope Network, that was the
idea,
direction of creating this committee. And we listened to many of the things they do. We do a lot of different things, but that was in 12 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, the reunion of 2012. So there's just a little bit of additional history. And, I remember thinking, what is this all about? Well, it was creating an aura of caring within the class. We do care. We do care about others. And sometimes it's difficult to know how to relate that caring. And this was setting up sort of a more formal way of doing it, but it gave us permission to do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for filling that in. So basically, it took off. We had, as I said, we had some training, and I personally had participating in that because at one point, maybe 2 years later, I had open heart surgery for a valve replacement, and I came through with flying colors and everything was fine. And so I was put on the list that I was someone who would be happy to talk to someone else who was going through the same process. And shortly thereafter, I got a call from a very nice lady who was really scared, who was just really looking for assurance and kind of wondering what the process was going to be like. How was the aftermath? Was there pain? All those kinds of things. And I really think she came away after that conversation, feeling less afraid. So that's kind of the idea. Let me see here. Where are we? You and Joe kind of really got that off the ground, and it's been very successful. In 2014, after the successful, that's mine. Okay, as for the foundation story, Joe sort of felt that there was a need for a foundation to be able to provide the funds for needy classmates and projects that they felt were worthy causes. A board was established with the president, vice president, and treasurer, other officers, and a bookkeeper to keep track of donations and paying taxes and other requirements. We have a mission statement, which I'll get to, all of the information about the foundation you can find on Len's great website. So if you have a chance, stop by the website and take a look, because there's lots of good information there. I won't read to you the entire foundation mission statement, but the starting paragraph reads, "The mission of the class of 1951's foundation is to provide assistance to needy classmates through our caring committee and to promote community service projects that meet our criteria of making a meaningful contribution to the people and the environment of the world. The projects to be selected may address education, environment, and health." So aside for the needy classmates, some of the projects that we have chosen over the years to support, one was Teach for America. And that was a group where Teach for America was a national organization, but it was started by a Princeton undergraduate in 1989. And their desire by creating this, they're hoping to enlist, develop, and mobilize some of our nation's most promising future leaders to educate the nation's children. And we had, probably about 12 different undergraduates once they graduated, and they became Teach for America teachers. And we supported them. We followed what they were doing. We often visited them. I had the opportunity to visit a really great young woman, Esther Clovis, who has attended some of our dinners and reunions. And she taught for, I would say, maybe 3 years. We went to her classroom that was in Newark, I believe. And it was just, really gratifying to see what a great job she did with these kids who were not in a very nice area. Probably, wouldn't have had such a great teacher. And she just was wonderful. And now she has gone on to be a lawyer in a very prestigious firm in Philadelphia. So most of these young people who teach for Teach for America, are taking a break from graduating from Princeton and before they're starting their career, or maybe they haven't really quite decided on what they want to do. So it's a great thing for them as well. Another project that we supported for years was Ignite STEM, and that is still going strong. Actually, today I just got an invitation for a workshop in New York City. All their workshops are in New York City, and they are putting on a workshop. And what they do is they promote all the STEM subjects, and they help the teachers. They get the teachers excited about this, but they also supply them with methods and tools on how to to teach the STEM subjects, but also really to get teachers and children excited about this. So that seems to be still doing very well. There were other smaller projects like the PD Green project, which was teaching inmates how to read. I believe. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Where was I? And also I think we had a food project for a community that was food insecure. There've been several other smaller ones, but those are kind of the main things. And now we're supporting Princeton University Cares Day, and I'm going to turn that back to Bob to talk a little bit more about that, since he's been closer to the university for supporting that.
Thank you, Eb. You know, I have one memory related to Teach for America. One of the students, one of our mentees, brought her class to Princeton for the better part of a day, and there were about a dozen inner city children walking around. It was just a beautiful thing to see them. Their jaws just dropped. You know, they had never been out of the city, and here they had an opportunity with their teacher to walk around. It was a very beautiful thing, and it stuck in my mind. So listen, what happened about a couple of years ago, we became aware of the mental health, it's been called a crisis, in college students. You know, we read about students dropping out. Unfortunately, there have been some suicides. And we looked at each other and asked if there was anything we as a foundation might do to provide service, to provide assistance, to provide funding for a program. And at the time, what I did, and this was about 3 years ago now, Melissa Marks, Dr. Melissa Marks, who was the new executive director of McCosh, I made an appointment to see her, to ask her if she had any projects, anything that we could participate in the way of supporting mental health education, mental health support for students. And what she did was she put me in touch with Judy Jarvis. Judy Jarvis is the executive director of the Office for Campus Engagement. It was just interesting to know that they had an Office of Campus Engagement, which looks at the social issues of the students being here. It's not just an academic creation. And Judy Jarvis made us aware that the Office of Campus Engagement was sponsoring a community care day in October of 2023. And I'll just read you, the description of what that was to be. The idea of Community Care Day came directly from students, and its goal is to encourage our community to develop habits and practices for integrating self and community care into their daily and weekly life. Community Care Day is not a one-day solution, but rather a way to put a point of focus on rejuvenation, reflection, camaraderie that we hope will continue on for each person after the day ends. All of the offerings are drop-in, and many are led by offices and groups that lead wellness, arts, and outdoor activities that you can continue to engage in throughout the year. This was the pilot Community Care Day in October of 2023. I spoke to Judy, and she was thrilled to know that the foundation was interested in support, and we ended up making a $10,000 contribution to Community Care Day. It was a huge success based on the polling of students and faculty who participated. And we got this letter from Judy Jarvis that's posted on the website, by the way. Dear class of 1961 Foundation members, thank you very much for your generous support of the inaugural Community Care Day. Your contribution was essential in, in allowing us to plot a new approach to rejuvenation, mindfulness, and well-being. And our entire staff, faculty, and student working group is grateful. It is so important for us to be able to find innovative ways to help students in the campus community, help them to refresh and strengthen connections, to help manage stress. And we know that Community Care Day was a very positive contribution to that. Thank you again for your support. That was 1963. Because it was so successful, the foundation agreed to support it again this past year, October 2024. And again, a huge success. We're talking about 90+% positive reactions. And then we, as a foundation, got together and thought, gee, are there any other ways that we might make our contribution to promoting mental health, to dealing with this crisis? And I went back to Judy after this most recent Community Care Day, and asked her to put her thinking cap on and to see if there are any other ways we might be able to support. Ev had some wonderful ideas about supporting individuals who might be troubled. Just think of an individual who's having problems but is on scholarship here perhaps and can't afford to drop out for the year. Could we possibly provide a stipend for them to be able to travel back home? They might not be able to afford that. Perhaps to take some form of training at home. So we're looking possibly to, find a means of supporting individuals and then having them report back to us about their experiences. This is just a new thought we have. We may end up suggesting that we support Community Care Day again next year. It's been very positive, and we're looking for suggestions from all of you about obviously what we should be doing with our funds. Frankly, we are debating, and I don't know whether we've done anything, Ev and Joe, about the wildfires in California. I don't know what our current status is. We were talking about making a contribution from the foundation to that.
Yeah, we have had that approved by our board. We have a quorum. So I think right now we originally thought about the Red Cross. After reading the column that went out today in the Paw about the wildfires, did any of you see that? Anyway, at the end of that, they said, "Do you want to help?" And they left a link there. So we'll
Princeton
see if we
Princeton
can
Club of Los Angeles, or
right.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
we'd like to do it. Just how, and who to target. We have to do a little more work on that. Jim?
Another initiative that we are researching, pursuing. Many of you know and have participated in the conference calls that we've had about various issues of aging and health. During COVID, we had two wonderfully run conversations led by Gil Oman on COVID. One of the last ones we had was moderated by a elder care law firm,
right,
and talked about issues of assisted living, CCRCs, living wills, and we've come to realize that this transition, from living independently to living in an assisted living or CCRC is costly. And we have been made aware that at least one family has not been able to make a transition because of the cost. And the thought of providing funds for that kind of transition is something that we are looking into, debating, and again, looking for your input into possibilities. Does that, Ev and Jim, does that?
Yeah, I think that's it. I probably would add one more point to the support of the Princeton Community Care Day. And that is that we're sort of the exclusive supporter of that. So the class gets some public credit for what they're doing.
Yes.
But I would say probably the one thing I would add to Bob's description of it is that the day exposes, I mean, literally all faculty, grad students, postdocs, undergraduates, whatever their everybody that's quote part of the university community. It exposes them to the very significant. I never had any idea what they were doing, but they are devoting a lot of significant resources to this, along with other colleges, because mental health is a real issue. There are a lot of areas within Princeton that support these things, but the broad group isn't aware of them. And so a big part of the day is kind of just, allowing people to wander around in a program manner and see what's going on in lots of different things, not just, counseling per se, but organizations, how can I meet new people? Just something simple like that. I'd like to make new acquaintances. Are there organizations or things that I might do that? Football players and basketball players don't have to worry about that. They may have a lot of people already, but there's a lot of kids that come here as lonely frosh and stay lonely a lot longer than they should be. Whereas there are ways to get people active, and these. I think that's the one thing that's impressed us and have caused us to want to continue to move forward with the community care efforts and go from there. Just another point on the how do we take care of the people in LA? The first thought, if you watched any programming on television, is to send a check to the Red Cross, and that crossed our minds right away. But the idea that there may be really well-directed activities that places like the Princeton Club of Los Angeles are actively involved in, and perhaps we should be directing our attention to those that are closer to the Princeton home than it might be. So we haven't made any decisions about that yet, but we're going to make a commitment. And what it looks like depends on what we learn in the process of moving along this way. We have other projects that Carol Wojciechowicz had set up, and she sort of sat back and she said, do you realize how much work for Princeton University the Princeton Fire Department puts in? And the short answer is no, got no idea. And she's been on the board of the Princeton Fire Department, says we ought to be thinking about, kicking a little support their way just to say thank you.
It's the first aid squad, Jim.
Pardon me?
It's the first aid squad that makes many
First
trips.
aid,
to
well,
campus. Yeah,
I had the fire department in my head because
right, that's okay.
But that's kind of what's going on
Right.
there. I would mention other things that one of Joe's original observations is that we've had from time to time classmates with special economic needs that we've addressed by a few phone calls among different people that could help. We have taken that on as a desire. We want to be able to do that, which is not to say I need $20 till payday, but something that when somebody comes in with a real need and we can dig down and help a little bit, not with hundreds of thousands of dollars, but with something that's meaningfully economically, we continue to want to be able to step in and do that as part of our mission statement there. So do that. So I would not, really take this on. One of the things we wanted to do is, other than send you an appeal letter every year, is tell you that we're very open-minded about things that we ought to be considering for this foundation. We have thoughts about what are we going to do with the foundation when there are none of us left? You know, what do we do? Do we just turn the money over to the university and say good luck, as we've been doing with annual giving and other things of that nature? Or do we basically try to create some kind of an endowment that supports things that we all collectively believe are pretty important, that sustain itself after the class of 61 and it's by itself is no more. So some ideas from you and from our classmates are more than welcome. The whole mental health thing came about an appeal of this type. I'm not saying there was anything wrong with Teach for America or educating young kids and motivate them towards STEM studies, but the mental health thing came about by classmates coming and saying that's the biggest issue. And we looked at some things to do other than sort of sitting there and say, well, let's just all donate to some of the local foundations that do that. We decided to try to get more active, and we just as a member of the board, we're very grateful to the legwork that Bob has done with the university to find out exactly what they're doing, because they've been very open and shared things that I'd be surprised. You don't read about Princeton suicides on the campus, but they're going on. I'll leave it at that. And so we're trying to learn more and then share with all of you the types of things that we're trying to do. Good.
Jim, let me offer a thought, which is that if in our wisdom, our collective wisdom, we want the foundation to continue its good work after we're all gone, we need to think about new board members who are the daughters or sons of classmates or others who are interested in the class for some other reason to join the board, because the board we need to have a succession plan to carry on the work of the foundation. And
Well
maybe,
said, George. And
Good.
that's a thought that we need to figure, because it's right now, as you can see, it's 5 or 6 of us old farts.
I love it.
we've lost 6 old farts just within the last 2 weeks, so we're getting there. Excuse me.
George, if you want to open this up, in addition to people raising their hands, there is an icon, raise hand icon on your computer, and you can do that. So maybe this is the time for the rest of us listening to Jim, to Ev, and to Bob to chime in with a question or a comment. So either raise your hand visibly or use the raise hand icon on the computer.
Oh, here's.
Paul Earl,
Yeah.
unmute yourself and then ask your question.
You got to unmute, Paul.
Unmute, Paul. Unmute yourself.
Paul, you're
Hi, can you hear me?
We can
Peter?
hear you.
now, yes.
There
Yes,
you go.
Paul, you're unmuted. Go ahead, ask your question. Comment?
I wanted to ask George, how many classmates do we have who are still alive, as far as you know?
Len Burton can correct me on this, but I think we started out with 740, and we are around 690 now. I'm sorry,
No.
390. 390.
Yeah.
390. I don't want to say that's better,
At
but
half, right?
Yeah,
that's that's not bad.
Bill Ewing, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. I want to say thank you. I want to express
We
my
have, we have 389 living classmates, 389.
Okay.
I
Okay,
just want to say thanks to those of you who devoted so much time and thought and energy to the foundation. I think it's wonderful. And to express the thought that the fires in California are, of course, a terrible disaster. But we're talking about billions that are going to have to go into there. And I personally prefer the idea, the work you've done with the Princeton Cares Day. And I'm looking at the article in Paul, I think they arrived today, from a young woman from West Virginia, an alumna, who has talked about the hard time she had when she got there, being from, a disadvantaged family and an area that didn't have any Princeton students, and how lonely and she could very easily, if she didn't have such a strong constitution, have ended up being one of those suicides, I think. And that mental health for college students is really important issue, and I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay,
It's serious.
Ellen Boyer.
Unmute, Ellen. Ellen's muted.
Oh, unmute. Unmute.
We can't hear.
There you
Sorry
go.
about that. I just want to support what Bill just said. I questioned the whole idea of giving the money to the Red Cross Los Angeles as just as a too big a river, and to have any impact of significance. And I also want to point out that because the foundation is from the Princeton class of 61, some relationship to Princeton, I think, is important from the point of view that people who donate the money assume that it's going to be in some way related to Princeton, even if the foundation original papers don't require that. So I think the fact that Los Angeles Princeton Club is running a campaign may make that easier if people still want to donate to the Los Angeles catastrophe. But I really support keeping the money closer to home.
Very good.
Bill Ewing.
We hear you, Ellen. We hear you.
We hear you. Yeah.
Now, in George's announcement, which Len put out at the end, there was a reference that we could ask Jim to talk about Princeton football. And just a little anecdote on that. I went to the Princeton-Harvard game this past fall, took one of my grandsons with me, and the day before, I called up and I said, I'd like 2 tickets. And they said, would you like them on the 50-yard line? And would you like them down low? And I said, yes. You cannot do that at Ohio State or Michigan or any other place. You cannot. So, Jim, I think that says something about the quality of the football. And by the way, Princeton lost very, very quickly. In the first half, Princeton was way behind, and then Harvard put in its 3rd string, and Princeton began to score some touchdowns. So, Jim, could you give us an enlightenment about what's going on?
Well, there are years I'd rather talk about than this one, but I would say that I was frustrated. One of the games I went to was the game against Howard, and I went because the last time we were in town and I had a chance to go to the game. By the way, we won the Howard game this year, so it was a good game to have attended. But everybody said, you really got to go to the Howard game because the band that they put on display is phenomenal. And so Susan and I arrived at the game. We're sitting there in the stands, and I'm looking around, and we're on the Princeton side. Practically the entire Princeton side was full. I was absolutely shocked. And Susan tends to get cold rather quickly. And she promised that if we went to the game and she was cold, I wouldn't make her sit there, or I'd move to the other side or something along those lines. So we waited till halftime came. Princeton was in the lead and doing well, and they ended up in the lead. So I won't spoil it there. But the band came on from Howard, and I'm telling you, it was phenomenal. I mean, they came out, it wasn't the Ohio State band, but it was one one great performing band. The Princeton band kind of lined up on the side, and there were probably 10 of them in total on the side, but the Howard band was worth the wait, worth the watch. And so Susan dragged me out of there kind of at halftime. And so we kind of embarrassed to leave. Half the Princeton side left after the band had performed and didn't stay for the game. So they didn't get the benefit of the crowd. So it's the sports are not getting the attendance you'd like to see.
That's true.
Men and women's basketball tends to do pretty well, but they don't have to have a lot of people there to make it look like a good game.
Jim,
So-
is Princeton football being negatively affected by the portal and nil?
Well, that's what I was going to get into a little bit. I noted one thing that Princeton sends to all the people that donate to football. They send out a little summary of the recruits for the incoming class, and so I looked at the list this year of who in the incoming class. And they're allowed I think they're allowed 30 football admits, and they usually get about 32 because there's a couple of walk-ons per se. And I think there were at least 12 of the 30 that weighed 175 pounds or less. And that's usually not what you want to see. Now, they had some of the larger people there. That I would say, I recall Jim Wickenden once telling me about an essay that one of the admitted football players had written that was 265 pounds. And in his essay about what he liked to do, he put down at the end, and I enjoy the occasional baked dish. He was a pretty sizable boy. And we just don't seem to be getting what I would call the athletes in. As I looked at this year's class, and I thought it, reflected this thing. So one of the things that you will not see in the Ivy League, at least in the thing, is there's going to be theoretically in the settlement with the NCAA, each of the schools about the team is being given for football and for basketball. They're going to get $20 million each to basically disperse and do with as they see fit. I don't think there's an Ivy League school that's going to spend a nickel of that in terms of financial support or extra the money being paid to the athletes that are in the sport. By the way, just to put it in perspective, last year's USC quarterback made about $8 million playing for USC.
Oh my God.
Okay. And so now he is in Los Angeles. He was in a lot of commercials and did well. But it's where Ohio State is. I mean, their expenditures on athletics with this thing it's crazy. So I asked the athletic office, I said, I've heard rumors that Penn is going to put together a little money bag to kind of pass it on to the athletes and do it, quote, publicly legal. It's not in violation of anything. The Ivy League has said they're not going to do that. They're not going to allow it. And that's still the position that Princeton has. But so I asked the university, what happened, asked somebody in the athletic office without giving the details, what happened to the team this year? Well, in about 4 of our games this year, we had, there's 44 guys that are in the first 2 strings, 22 guys on offense and defense, 22 the second stringers that are on offense and defense. And we had less than 22 of the active top 44 players playing in about 4 games this year because of injuries or different things. So we were banged up pretty good. I think the team did the best they could, but an unusual injury year this year. So I think that's kind of what happened going past. But the other question is, what do you say to kids now that, I got scholarships to a lot of good schools when I was a high school kid, that for a free education, and you paid to go to Princeton. And I came here for the reason everybody else did, is I came here for a good education and got one. But the idea of selling a kid and getting a good education now isn't what it used to be when you have some hard cash going out. And saying that we pay, every child that attends Princeton that needs cash to do so is going to get it, through scholarship aid and the like. That's said to all the athletes, but not specifically the athletes as it has well. And so I said, what do you say to these kids that are talking about Princeton? And they said, every one of them gets summer jobs. Okay, they promise each of them a good summer job that's effectively an internship that leads them into perhaps a good career when they graduate. So that's true of just about all of the athletes that come in some way or short, but it's especially true where they try to basically do that. Whether that sells or not in today's pay for play rules that are going on with non-Ivy League schools, but it's going to have a big effect on Ivy League football in terms of perhaps having we have a fellow that played it 2 years ago that is a starting receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. Plays well. He scored about six or seven touchdowns this year as a receiver. You're not going to see those kids in the Ivy League anymore because they're going to get bought off by the people and the promise of a career in athletic. I mean, I guarantee you the kid that's playing for Cincinnati probably the highest paid classmate in his class at Princeton. Those guys are getting about 800,000 as the top rookie salary. So you can't tell them that they're not going to get paid. They're just not going to come to Princeton or any of the Ivy League scales any longer. And so I think you're going to see more balance in the institutions than you saw. Well, that's probably it, but we're not doing anything different, and we're not going to do anything different. And that's Ivy League football, and I'm proud to have played Ivy League football, and I'm and I think the kids that are doing so now remain proud to play at football. But you don't see those athletes and think they're getting paid under the table because they aren't now, and they won't be in the future.
So this is a big subject. We have to also account for what's happened with coaching in college sports. And there are coaches getting $5, $8, $10 or more $1 million a year. Some of them not even producing winning teams. And the players coming out of high school are recruited very personally by these coaches. And then a year or two later, they just fly the coop and leave the kid behind. And it's a problem, many problems in collegiate sports. And the NCAA has been a very poorly run organization, I think. But I wanted to offer a vignette following the comment about the Princeton Band. I haven't seen the Princeton Band in quite a few years now, although I did see them around reunions. And I did see them other times. They're sort of a ragtag, fun-loving group. But my story is a nice one. It's when I was new in Seattle many years ago, about 1970s. I came there in 1969. I was at someone's home right across the street from where we had bought a house. And they had a nice living room and an alcove for a bar. And the whole alcove was papered with covers of Sports Illustrated. One of which was the cover story and cover photo of the Princeton Band. And amazingly, my host said, "Look at that. You played clarinet, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "Well, clarinets are in the front row, and that looks like you." And it was.
I can't believe that's
How about
fantastic.
that? Cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, that's well, the Sports Illustrated running around. Kazmaier made the cover of Time magazine, but I don't think anybody else can match that, Gil.
Wow. Wow.
Jim, do you have any thoughts about what Frank DeFord might be saying about basketball today?
Yeah. What? Let's see. You said what might he be saying about it today?
Yeah, I know what he used to say.
Yeah, he kind of soured on I think Ivy League athletics a little bit. At least the articles that I've read. We had a Friends of Football outing before one of the Princeton games when I was involved in the Friends of Princeton football, and we had a meeting that lasted for about 15 minutes, and then everybody wanted to go see the freshman game because the freshmen had couple of likely stars. apparently Frank DeFord wanted to drop by the meeting and see what's going on, and nobody was there because everybody had left to go to the thing. He didn't know that, but his write-up in the Sports Illustrated was something along the lines that I went to a Friends of Princeton football meeting and nobody was there. One very funny guy.
Well, years and years ago, when I was in the men's club of New Canaan, Connecticut, I asked Frank to come and speak to the group. We had a meeting every Friday with a first-rate speaker. And Frank was promoting one of his books at that point. That's when I first knew he was sick, because he walked the walk from the parking lot to the point where the meeting was. He had to stop several times to get a breath. Anyway, in the question and answer period, and these are almost all retired executives, and he was peppered with questions about the sort you might suspect. And one of them was, Frank, overall, what do you think of big time college athletics? And he said, it's a fraud.
Yeah.
And you could have heard a pin drop in that room.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But one of the things that we do in our class conversations is keep the meeting limited to 1 hour, because we want you all to return to the next one that John Cooper is in the process of preparing, and will shortly we'll send out a notice about the next member of our class who has had an interesting life who will speak to us. So does anyone have any final comments they would like to make?
Let me just say I counted 39 of us participating in this, which is a great turnout.
It's a great turnout, absolutely. So thank you all.
Thanks to Ev and Jim
Absolutely.
and everyone who's been involved with the foundation and the supporting, caring for our classmates and all these activities.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes,
Jim, thank you very much for
Thank you,
this.
leaders.
Good.
Thanks,
Thanks.
George, Ev,
Good.
Bob. It's
And
great.
give us your ideas for donations. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Please, we want to hear from you.
Okay,
Thank you
well,
all.
Right.
thank you all.
Yeah.
I'll close the meeting and see you at the next class conversation.
See you
Thanks
next
all.
one,
Very
Peter.
good.
Take
Right
care.
on.
Thank
Jim.
you. Thank
Hey,
you,
Jim,
Peter.
Ev.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.